Okay, thank you very much, Jamie, and welcome everybody. Hello from England. Today we're going to talk about the IELTS writing, the task 2, and specifically we're going to talk about agreeing and disagreeing essays. Okay. So first of all, we're going to look at understanding the question, looking at the question carefully. Then we're going to look at planning your answer. After that, we'll look at some language that you can use to develop your ideas. And as Jamie said, at the end, we can have a question and answer session. So if there's anything you're not sure about or any additional questions that you'd like to ask, please just put them in the chat and Jamie and I will try and answer them as best we can. Okay. So what are the aims of this webinar? So you should be able to, by the end, to understand this type of essay question. Okay. To plan your essay, it's very, very important to plan your essay, to take the first couple of minutes just to do some plans before you start writing. Okay, we'll look at that in more detail. To use linking expressions to add supporting evidence to develop your arguments and add more points. And finally, a way of offering an opposing view, so a different point of view to yours, and then a way to counter that argument. Okay. So, first of all, let's look at reading the question. Okay, always take a little bit of time to read the question. It's very important, and to make sure that you are answering exactly the question that they are asking you. Okay, so let's look at this example that we are going to use today. Individuals can do nothing to improve the environment. Only governments and large companies can make a difference. Okay, to what extent do you agree or disagree? So what's the overall topic of this essay? Someone can put that in chat. What's the general topic that we are looking at here? Any ideas? Okay, good. Yes, we're looking at the environment. We're looking at improving the environment, or very good. Atta's using some synonyms already, protecting the environment problems. Okay, so one of the best things to do is to highlight the key words in the question, okay, so that you can really focus on making a relevant answer. So looking at this question here, okay, which words would you say are the key words? Which words would you underline if you had this question? Okay, very good. Improve. Individuals, very good. Improve the environment. Okay, and yeah, we've got governments there and large companies. That's very good. Hasaran, got that right? Yeah, very good. Okay. Okay. So underlining the keywords. Yeah, so individuals. So we've got different groups related to this question. We've got individuals, we've got governments, and we've got large companies. Okay, we have our overall topic, which is improving the environment, as everybody said. And we're looking at, is it possible to make a difference, or can individuals do nothing? Okay, very good. And it's also a good idea to underline the key words in the question. So to make sure that you have the exact structure for each of the different types of questions. So here we are looking at an agree or disagree essay. Okay. So that's the first part. Read the question carefully and underline the key words that you're going to use in your essay. Okay. The next thing you need to do is to decide overall, do you agree or disagree with this statement? Okay. So you decide this first so that then you can come up with arguments that follow that point of view. Are you agreeing or are you disagreeing? Okay, and you must decide one way or the other. So maybe you could put up, okay, Shafiqul disagrees. Anybody else disagree or anybody disagree? Okay, we've got some, generally we're disagreeing here. Okay, very good. That works very well. So agree or disagree essays, decide at the beginning which side you are going to follow. Okay, very good. We've got, I think everybody disagrees. I don't think there's any agreement going on there. That's very good. But you might agree. Okay, so if you agree, then you are going to make some notes on that side. Or if you disagree, you're going to make some notes on that side. Okay, well, there's a question, can we partially disagree? Yes, you can do that. But I think it's better to have a strong view one way or the other, because it's easier for the examiner then to say, yes, this person agrees, or yes, this person disagrees. But it is possible to be somewhere in the middle. Okay, so what you're going to do now is you're going to make your plan. Okay, so you're going to think of 2, maybe 3, but generally speaking 2 arguments that support your point of view. Okay, so 2 arguments agreeing or 2 arguments disagreeing. Okay, let's start with the first one, agree. Okay, so if you agreed with the statement, for example, some of your arguments could be a single person is responsible for only a tiny amount of pollution. So why would they need to do anything to improve the environment? Okay, whereas governments and companies can actually make huge changes and quick changes. Okay, so you just, in your plan, you just write down very quickly the 2 arguments that you are going to put in your essay. Okay, if you disagree, so here, for example, we have many people acting together can have a big impact, even if they're individuals. And what we do as individuals can influence governments and corporations. Okay. So if you make your plan before you start writing, okay, you don't have to think of ideas when you're writing. You already have the ideas written down. You can focus on your grammar, you can focus on your vocabulary, you can focus on your linking phrases while you're writing. Okay. Also, you have your paragraph plan already in place. So the first bullet point, that will be the first paragraph in your body, and the second bullet point will be the second paragraph in your body. So you also have your organization already done before you start writing. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look at the structure, okay, the overall structure. So first we have our introduction, okay. In the introduction, you are going to paraphrase the question. We will look at all of these in turn, okay, one by one. So in the introduction, paraphrase the question, give your personal opinion, okay, and then just very generally, very briefly, the reasons for your opinion, okay. These are the 2 points that you put in your plan, all right. Then you have your body paragraph. The body paragraphs follow the same pattern, okay? So this is both of the body paragraphs, okay? First sentence is always the topic sentence, what we call the topic sentence. This means that it introduces the topic of that paragraph, okay? And everything in that paragraph must be related to the topic sentence, okay? You cannot change topic in the middle of the paragraph, okay? Then you explain that main point in more detail. What exactly do you mean? Then you can give a specific example, maybe an example from your country, an example from your city. And then finally, you give an opposing argument, something against your argument, and then finally you counter it. It's good to do that. You don't have to do that, but it does show that you can think about the other point of view as well as the arguments that you have on your side. Okay, then your second body paragraph will follow the same pattern. Topic sentence, explain it, give an example, maybe opposing argument, and then countering it, okay? And then finally, the conclusion, okay? So here we're going to give our opinion again and summarize the main points in our body. A good idea then is to make a recommendation, okay? So maybe a recommendation or a warning about the future related to this topic, okay? So let's look at each of these parts of the essay individually, okay? So introduction, so paraphrasing the question, giving your opinion and the main points, okay? So thinking about paraphrasing, okay? There are 2 different ways that you can paraphrase. You can do that in terms of vocabulary, so you can use a synonym, you can use a different word, or you can change the form of the word. So if you have a verb in the question, you can use the same word, but use the noun form, or use an adjective. And that shows that you can manipulate the language, okay? So both of those are possible. Okay, Farouk has a good question, but I'm going to answer that when we look at the language related to the opposing argument, okay? Okay, and you can also change the order of the information. So paraphrasing is not just synonyms, it is also word formation. So you don't forget that as a way of paraphrasing the question. Okay, and if it's in the active form, you can turn it into a passive, or if it's in a passive form, you can turn it into an active. Okay, so these are all ways that you can change the words that are in the sentence, in the question. Why do we need to change the words in the question? First of all, if you copy the question, that's not included in your word count. Okay, so you may not have as many words as you think you have. And more importantly, it makes the examiner think that you are relying on the words in the question rather than using your own resource, your own vocabulary. Okay, so it's very important to do. So let's have a look at a way of paraphrasing the question. So a good way to begin your introduction, which is quite hard sometimes, is to give a phrase that shows a general opinion. Okay, so for example, here we have, it is widely believed that. Okay, this shows a general opinion. Does anybody else have any other expressions they know to give general opinions? Okay. Okay, yeah, it is argued that. It is often argued that. Okay, yes, very good. So Hashim Moran, it is well known. That's very good. Basil. Okay, we've got many people often believe that. Okay, very good. Very nice. Okay, so good way to start your introduction. Then you're in, then you've begun. Okay, it is said that by and large, we've got some very good ideas there. Okay, so now we're going to look at how we can paraphrase the question. So we've got the environment. You can't really change that word, so that's okay. In the question, we have improve the environment. So what word could we use? What's a synonym for improve that we could use here? And maybe change. Not sure about enhance. Make better does. Revamp doesn't quite work. Somebody used it earlier on. You could alleviate the problem. I think development, save. I think save is very good. Yeah, and protect. So Atta, and I think it was Marielle that said change. Yeah. And as a lot of you have noticed already, you need to change it into the ing form. Oh, very nice. Rahamat, safeguard. That's very nice. Safeguarding the environment. Okay. And as a lot of you notice, because it's the subject, you need to use the ing form. Okay, so safeguarding the environment, protecting the environment is beyond the power of individual. So in the question, we have individuals. So in this case, we're using it as a noun. Okay. What form of the word are we using here? Is beyond the power of individual. And then we've got a missing word. Okay, very good, Said. It's an adjective. Okay. Okay, and Marielle's ahead of us already. So after our adjective, we need to put a plural noun. So citizens works very, very nicely. Yeah, so we're changing both the word in the question and adding a synonym. We could say individual people as well. Yeah, Damanpreet, that's very good. Entity is more often used to describe a company, so you wouldn't really use that to describe a person. Okay, individual efforts. Yeah, that's very nice. Plural, Marielle, I would say efforts, but that would work very well. Okay. And then we've got governments. That's okay, we're using the same word. Then we need to have a synonym for large companies. Okay. Shareholders maybe, okay, multinationals, very nice, organizations. Very close, Rajni. Corporate is an adjective. Corporations, Sanad, yeah, so very, very good. Big corporations, very nice firms, that works very well, okay. So corporations and governments alone are able to, and then we need a verb that will go with effective action. Take effective action. Okay, very good, Emily. I think take is probably implement, works quite well as well. Let's have a look. Okay, so here we've got protecting citizens, corporations, and take action. Okay, so we've paraphrased the question, not only with synonyms, but also changing the word formation of some of the vocabulary. Okay. So now we need to move on. So that's our general statement where we paraphrase the question. Then we're going to follow that with our opinion, okay? The thesis statement, which is our opinion. So we need to have an expression to give your own opinion, first of all. So any ideas? We don't want to use any abbreviations, Harishankar, because that's not formal English. Okay, very nice. I completely disagree with that. Karthik, I feel that. Okay, Harshimran, this essay degree, yeah, very nice, Fatma. That's very academic, very good. I believe that. I am of the opinion that. Very nice, done. Okay. Try to avoid using according to me with opinions, okay? Generally we use that for what somebody else has said, okay? So in this case, we've got, I strongly disagree with this point of, what's the missing word there? Okay, very nice, very good. I strongly disagree with this point of view, okay? Very good. So a good, strong phrase to give your opinion. Okay. And then we are going to summarize, give the main points, just very quickly, very briefly. So remember that you've already written these down in your plan. Okay. And we're going to take disagree as our sample essay today, which is good because pretty much everybody disagreed. So you've already noted down your ideas. So I believe that here's your first point. Again, we've got a missing word, individual efforts, very nice, Abir. Individual actions, Shiv, yeah, very good. Have a look. Okay, individual actions can collectively contribute to positive environmental change. Okay. While persuading governments, so this is our second main point. So again, what could we put in the gap? To protect the whole world. That's quite nice. Anything else? The entire world. Remember, we're thinking about the environment. If we use our, we need to then not use the, but we could say to protect our world, our green world, okay? Here we got natural world. Yes, very good, Stefana. Okay. So general statement, paraphrasing the question, strong point of view, and summarizing your main arguments. Okay. So now we're going to look at the body paragraphs. Okay. So as we said before, the first sentence is always the topic sentence. Okay, we're introducing the main idea. So for example, we can use the expression first of all. Okay, this is what we are beginning with. Okay. And then we give our main point. Okay, first and foremost, that would work as well. Very nicely done. Yeah, or firstly. All of those would work as possibilities. So we state very clearly our first point of view, our first argument. Okay. The next point is that we explain that in a bit more detail. So in this case, we are giving the reason. Very important, always use some kind of phrase to show the purpose of this sentence. Is it an explanation? Is it an example? Is it a consequence? So here we have this is because, okay, which explains that we're now going to give the reason for our argument. Okay, so the effects of many small actions quickly add up. Okay, or yeah, for example, in other words, Fatma, that's a very good way to introduce an explanation. Very good. Okay, then we're going to give a specific example. Okay, so for example works very well for that. And then we talk about people walking or taking the bus instead of driving. For instance, as well as another option. So this is a very specific argument now to give as an example. Okay. And now we have the opposing argument, okay? Remember, you don't have to do this. So if you're not sure about it, you don't have to include it, but it does show another point of view, okay? So a good way to introduce the first part, the opposing point, is with an expression like, while it is true that, or while it is true to say that, one person acting alone cannot make much difference. Okay, so that's the opposing argument. That's what somebody else might say against your argument. Then you counter it. Many individuals doing the same thing can have a dramatic positive effect. Okay, so topic sentence, explanation, example, opposing argument, counter of the opposing argument. Okay, and this then we have our first body paragraph. Okay, and the second body paragraph will follow the same form, but you will have a different argument in the second body paragraph. Okay, and notice the use of these introductory phrases, linking phrases, to always show the purpose of each sentence, okay? Very important to make it clear to the examiner what you are doing in each sentence. You don't want them to have to guess what you're doing. Make it very, very clear, okay? Okay, so now we are going to look at the conclusion, okay? So what do we need to put in the conclusion? So the first thing is to restate your opinion, okay? So following from what you put in the introduction. Then you can bring the main ideas back together again, okay? Very important thing to remember is that you don't introduce new ideas in your conclusion, okay? No new arguments, all of them need to be in the body. Second body paragraph, Harish, that's going to be the same format as the first one. We haven't done a full example of that, but it's the same format, okay? Let me go back to... Okay, so when you do your second body paragraph, you will be talking about the fact that individual actions can influence governments and influence corporations. Same way of doing it, okay? State that clearly in your topic sentence. Explain in a bit more detail what you mean. You could use that is to say, or in other words, which is what Fatma suggested, or this is because. Give a specific example and then give an opposing argument. Okay. Let me just check that. I wouldn't repeat the same phrases. You could say, for example, another argument against this statement is, okay. Don't repeat the exact same phrases, because that means that it looks like you have a limited resource for linking phrases. So you should always change. But a good thing to say is a second, another argument, something like that. You can also start by saying furthermore, exactly. But you wouldn't say first of all. Okay, you would want to show that this is my second argument disagreeing with the main topic. Okay, all right. Good. So let's go back to the conclusion. Okay, so as I was saying, opinion, summary of main points, no new ideas. Okay, very, very important. So first thing we're going to do is use a phrase to introduce the conclusion. Again, make it very clear to the examiner, we're starting the conclusion now. Anybody have any other phrases that we could use instead of in conclusion? Okay, Fatma, to sum up, very good. In short, that's very nice, Ali. To conclude, Siraj, yeah, overall it's more often used with the task one, I would say. All things considered, I would say is a little informal. Jamie, would you agree with that? All things considered?
Perhaps a little bit informal, Annalie. Yeah, I'd agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
there's a couple of standard openings for a conclusion that are formal and will be accepted for every answer. So I would advise maybe not trying to change them or tinker with them too much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in conclusion, to conclude, to sum up, you know, you only need one phrase because you're only writing one task too. So stick with one of those three, okay? I wouldn't use any of those other ones there because they tend to have slightly different meanings, okay? But to sum up is very good, Ramahaf. To conclude as well, we had, okay? Okay, so again, we are giving our statement very clearly. People can protect the environment by coordinating their individual actions. Again, we're changing the vocabulary. We have coordinate, we have people, we have individual actions. So we're not repeating any of the same vocabulary that we had at the beginning. Okay. Okay, and then we have the second argument that we put in our second body paragraph and linking it together very nicely. Okay, so people can protect the environment by coordinating their individual actions. That was your first argument, which in turn will have a positive effect on governments and corporations, which was your second argument in the second body paragraph. Okay, so very nicely, very briefly summarizing everything that you've said. No detail, okay? You don't want any detail in the conclusion. Okay. Yeah, that's a very good point, Harshiram. I think you could put that in your conclusion. Okay. Which will have a dominating effect. I think dominating is a bit strong, Harish. Okay. But you could talk about an influence, that they will have a strong influence on governments. Okay. Okay. Then another opinion phrase. Okay, so again, we're not repeating the opinion phrase that we had at the beginning. Does anyone remember the phrase that we used in the introduction to give a personal opinion? Okay, very nice, Marielle. I strongly disagree. Okay, so now change the form in my opinion. Okay. And then a very nice, strong way to finish that. Okay, that's a really good point, I would say, Harish. In the introduction and the conclusion, you are giving your own opinion. So in that case, you can say, in my opinion, I strongly believe. The body paragraphs, you should write those objectively. Okay, so you shouldn't use I or me or my in the body paragraphs, only when you give your own opinion. That's in the introduction and in the conclusion. Okay, very nice expression there, Dung. I hold the view that. That's a really nice way of giving your opinion as well. Okay, and we have a very clear, strong finish there. Everyone has a responsibility to care for the environment. So I think it's very good to end on a good, strong sentence, which really finishes the essay. Okay. Ali, I am of the view that, remember, we don't want to contract because it's academic, it's formal English. So you have to say, I am of the view that. But that's also a very nice expression. I strongly maintain that. Can we give examples from? Yeah, this is a very common question, Shiv. Can we give examples from our personal life? I know that in the question it says, use your own knowledge and examples. But what they mean is they use what you know, not personal anecdote. Okay, so you cannot say, yes, for example, my cousin works at, and he had a really bad time. That's not what they mean. You can use examples from your city, you can use examples from your country, you can use examples from your profession, from your experience, but you should express it in a general way. So again, you're not talking about some personal experience that you had. Okay, keep it objective in the body paragraphs, and actually keep the whole thing impersonal. There shouldn't be any personal stories that you're using at any point. Okay.
Annalie, if I could just make an additional point there. If you really feel like you don't have any personal knowledge about the topic, it's fine to invent your own examples. So, the examiner won't go away and check that it's actually, a true story or a real example that you're using. So you could say, like in my country, individuals have saved 2 million tons of carbon just from changing their light bulbs, for example. And, the real figure is not so important there as long as it's a logical argument and it supports your point. So yeah, that's also another option there.
Absolutely. And you can talk about a study or a research that's been done, and again you can just you make up that 80% of individuals, nobody's going to check it, it doesn't matter, they're looking at the language, they're not it's not a scientific thesis, so that's completely fine. Yeah. Good. There was a point about, yeah, from my perspective, that's fine. Yeah, you can use that one. That's really good. Okay. Yes, as Marielle says, just fabricate evidence. Just in this case, this is a case where you can fabricate evidence, and it's not going to be a problem. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that's the end of the presentation. So we've already looked at some questions, but maybe we can look at some more general questions now. If Jamie, do you want to read out some questions? I see there's 9 questions in the Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you very much, Annalie, for that presentation. That was very enjoyable and yeah, very, very interesting as well. So thank you. So we've got a few questions here from the first one, and a couple of people are interested in this. This is from Ada Bowali, and he or she, I'm sorry, Ada Bowali, I'm not sure, is saying, can we partially agree and disagree? So the example that we looked at was strongly disagreeing, and both paragraphs were talking about disagreeing with the statement. So is it okay to present both sides, essentially?
Yeah, and there was just a question like that just came up as well. So any kind of opinion essay, you can always give a balanced essay. You can always have one paragraph where you agree with the statement objectively, and one paragraph where you disagree with the statement. And then in the conclusion, you can say that you partially agree, and then you can give reasons why, you know, it should be a mix of the two arguments. It's not strongly on one side or the other. So definitely you can have 2 arguments on one side when it's to what extent you agree or disagree, or you can have a balanced essay. However, if you have a question where it says discuss both sides, then you must have a balanced essay. You must agree with have one paragraph agreeing with the first statement in the question and one paragraph agreeing with the second statement. You don't have any choice in that kind of essay.
Yeah. Excellent. I would add as well that a lot of teachers will tend to encourage you to choose one side to argue rather than trying to present a more balanced opinion. And this is because it can be the language that's needed to discuss both points of view can be a little bit more challenging. And sometimes you can end up tying yourself in knots trying to accommodate both points of view. So it might be worth, if you're not so confident in your ability to present to evaluate both sides, just choosing one and sticking with that, because it is a slightly more straightforward approach for the writing. But absolutely, I'd agree with you, Annalie. You can, if you're confident, you can absolutely discuss both sides. Great. We have another question from Hari Shankar, who is saying, if the topic is technical and can we use technical jargon in the essay? Is that okay to use very technically specific vocabulary?
Okay, you are very unlikely to get a technical essay. The essay questions are deliberately written so that anyone, you know, with a certain amount of education will be able to answer them. About the environment, about family, about education, things like that. So they won't be technical questions. If you use very technical jargon that's very specific to a certain profession, it's possible the examiner will not know that expression, and they may think that you've just created an expression. So I would avoid any kind of any jargon, basically. You're looking at academic English. That's not the same as technical English.
Yeah. Excellent. I would definitely agree with that, Annalie. Thank you. We have two related questions here from Noor and from let me see further down, Nabiha. Both are asking about the tenses that they should use. So the first question is, which tenses should I use in the writing, and should the tenses be the same throughout the task? So any thoughts on that?
Okay, first of all, they shouldn't be the same, because one of the things that you need to be showing is that you are able to use a range of tenses and a range of structures. So you don't want to try to only use one tense. Having said that, you should use the tense that's appropriate to the argument that you are making. I would say, to be very general here, very general, you tend to use present tenses, present perfect, because you are making general statements. You are unlikely to use the past simple unless you talk about a specific event that happened in the past, and that's your example. But other than that, you're talking generally, so you're more likely to use present perfect.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Thank you. I have a question here from the Unstoppable One, who is asking, it's a great name, who is asking, can we use an interrogatory or exclamatory question in the essay, particularly in the introduction? So I guess the question here is maybe about the use of a rhetorical question. Yeah.
Okay, so exclamation points you definitely want to avoid. Okay, no exclamation points. I would tend to not use the rhetorical question. I don't know if you agree with me there, Jamie. It's a bit risky, I think.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, I think candidates often try to use that as a type of hook for the introduction, because it, makes their, they're under the impression that it makes their writing more interesting or more, it will grab the attention of the examiner. Now, this is true for many other types of writing, that a rhetorical question can be used in the introduction to get the interest and to raise interest in the topic. I would say it's not really needed for an IELTS paper, and it might come across as slightly less academic. So I think it's better to stick with a more standard type of introduction. There's no need to try and grab the examiner's attention. You already have their attention. So yeah. Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Annalie, or is that fairly...
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Great. Sure. So Farouk has a question about what should we do if we have difficulty getting ideas for the topic. So I guess this is to do with the planning stage. What any tips if you're not getting ideas to respond to the question?
Okay, well, I think the first thing is regards preparation before the exam. So it's important to try and read around, watch documentaries on the kind of topics that come up in the IELTS. So again, like I said, the environment, the family, communication, technology. For one thing, that will give you arguments that you can use. And secondly, it will also give you some very good vocabulary on those areas. So it should certainly be part of your preparation, is reading articles, academic articles, and watching documentaries on the common IELTS topics. In terms of anything else, I mean, it's hard to say what you can do. I think that's what you have to do, because there's no way of not having arguments in the essay. And I think it would be very clear if you tried to do it without really saying anything specific. Again, you know, the examiners are not marking your content. They're not marking your point of view. They're marking your language. So the important thing is that you use those structures, that you have a very clearly structured paragraph, introduction, conclusion, things like that. So don't worry if you think maybe he won't agree with my point of view, or maybe he won't like my point of view. That they can't take that into account. They're correcting or they're marking your language. So you shouldn't worry too much about that.
So thank you. Now we're getting a lot of different questions here. Someone has asked how to structure, that would be Rahamath, how to structure the essay for partially agree or disagree question. I think that's a really big question, and perhaps it's something that we can answer in a future webinar. So we'll definitely consider how to tackle both an agree and disagree question, where you look at both sides. In fact, that is fairly similar to another type of IELTS task, which is the discuss both views essay. So they both follow a very similar structure. That's something we can look at in the future. People are also asking where it's possible to see this webinar, whether it's possible to see it after we finish up today. And yeah, it will be on our Facebook group, which I am just adding the link for in the chat there. So you can please feel free to join the group, and you'll be able to see this webinar and previous webinar slides as well. I think we've got a bit more time for a couple more questions. So let me see. We have a question from Sonia in the chat, who says, my tutor says that I can't give my opinion in the introduction by using words like I, and I strongly agree, I strongly disagree. Would you agree with that it's not a good idea to give your opinion using I strongly agree?
I wouldn't agree with that, I have to say. I think that you need to use your those kind of expressions, particularly in an opinion essay or an agree disagree essay. They are asking for your opinion. I do hear this sometimes, that I don't know quite where it comes from, this idea that you can't express your opinion using I or my. But you certainly can in the introduction, you certainly can in the conclusion, but the body paragraphs you should keep objective, okay? I think that maybe is where there's a bit of confusion. But if you're giving your opinion, you certainly want to say, I strongly disagree, in my opinion, I hold the view, one of those expressions. Otherwise, it's not clear to the examiner that this is your point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really, as you said, really important to make it clear that you're giving an opinion. If you didn't want to use the personal pronoun I, another possibility, you could say something like, this essay will argue that. And then you're introducing a passive form, and you're avoiding the maybe slightly more informal I. But I would say that both those forms are okay for giving your opinion, and as you said, absolutely include the opinion in the introduction. We have another question here from Prachi. Prachi says, do we have to use synonyms for each and every sentence? For example, for people, we could use citizens. So do we have to use another every time use a different word for it, to paraphrase?
Yeah, okay, this is something that I've seen quite a lot recently. Some candidates trying so hard to use synonyms that they end up using expressions which are just not natural, or they're not genuinely synonyms. So you don't have to always use a different word. You have to show the examiner that you have a wide resource of language. And that's what's important. So yes, if there is a clear synonym like individuals, citizens, people, the public, that's great, try and use the different synonyms. But don't sit there going, oh God, I used this word once before, I don't want to use it again, but I don't know a synonym. And you sit there and you just trying very hard to think of some other way of expressing it. I don't think that's helpful at all. I think another point on that is that if you make sure that your two arguments are very distinct, then you will have the opportunity to use a wider range of vocabulary anyway. So don't have two arguments that are more or less the same.
Thank you, Emily. That's a great answer. Now, I'm really sorry, everyone, that we can't get through your questions because we're going to have to wrap up now. I would just like to say that this has been a free webinar, and all we'd like you to do is please share, share our Facebook group. Come on to IELTSonlinetest.com. Nabaha is asking, will there be more webinars? There absolutely will be, and you can register your interest on our website, IELTSonlinetest.com. On our website, we also have a writing examination service. Actual writing examiners can evaluate your writing and give you specific feedback on your strengths and your weaknesses, as well as an estimated band score. We also have a similar service for speaking as well, if you're planning to take the speaking test. So if you have any suggestions for future topics for the webinar, please post them on our Facebook, on our website, or get in touch via email. The slides will be up on our website and Facebook shortly. So finally, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Annalie for presenting today. That's been really helpful, and thank you to everyone for joining. I hope to see you again for another webinar in the future. So thanks very much.
Thanks everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks very much for joining. Bye-bye.